Okay. It says we're live. It'll probably be delayed by a minute or two. But Pizza, could you check that for me if that's cool? Hello everybody in Discord, by the way. Welcome in. Devious will be back in just a second, and then we're going to begin. So we're going to just start. Pizza, Pizza, were you speaking just then?
Hello.
Devious is back. Hello, Devious.
We're live.
Hello.
Devious, hop on stage.
Stage. Accept.
Hello, Hacker. Hello, Dr. Puzzle. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, Kirufo. Gonna just start the UI deep dive. We do not want to let everybody know the event is starting. We're going to start that event, and then we're going to ping event notifications. We should be live on YouTube as well. Pizza or Devious, could you just check that for me?
Yeah, we're live.
Cool. UI deep dive.
Yeah.
Live now in event voice lounge. Come hang and share your opinions. Okay, I'm going to share my screen in here as well. God, this is a clanky setup, but we're all good. We appreciate this. Share your screen. I'm going to share the UI, game UI database base. Go live. All right, what's good, everybody?
Hello.
Appreciate y'all being here. We're going to give it a few minutes, and then we're gonna see. Where's chat? And then we're going to see. Hello, Hamid. Hello, everybody in Discord. Welcome in. We're going to give it a few minutes, let people join in, and then we're gonna start diving deep into game UI. We're going to talk about what we like. We're going to talk about what we don't like. We're going to talk about all things UI, good examples of it, why everybody loves Persona 5's UI, and then and go from there. Hello. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Backy, Monkey, Porn Takes Porn. Everybody on YouTube, hello. So again, just want to reiterate, we're doing both YouTube and Discord. So if there's maybe a delay in the YouTube or a delay in the Discord or whatever, then we do apologize for that. Please let us know if there are any technical issues. I believe if there is going to be a delay, it's more likely to be a delay in YouTube. So if there is a delay in YouTube, do apologize for that. That's just the way the streaming works. But good to see everybody. And we'll start in a couple of minutes. I'm here with Devious and Pizza once again.
Hello.
And we'll get started ASAP. How's everybody been? I hope everybody has been well. YouTube is live, though it's delayed a fair bit. Yeah, that's
recent big freeze in Texas. We're just getting over that.
Big freeze,
that
really?
One time. Yeah, it was pretty cold. Snowed a lot. Well, and like I've never seen that much snow before. Like,
wow, really?
Yeah, it was only like an inch or something, but like it was enough to make like a full snowman.
I mean, hey, Devious, you know an inch is enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everybody's been busy, doing good in LA. It's been something. Game for the Pirate Software Game Jam. Traveling for work during each week this year. Hey, I respect that. Traveling for work. How far? That's hopefully not too far. Yeah, Swampgate is saying there's a deep freeze here too. You know, I always think going into December, you kind of hit November, December, Christmas time, right? The new year. And always in my head, for some reason, I'm like, oh man, this is it. We're in like midwinter. And I always forget, for some reason, that like, no, the real deep winter comes in like January, February.
Yeah.
Right. The year's begun. It's not even close to being as cold as it's going to get. Planning on running a tabletop RPG, might build a client to help with that. Best of luck with that, for sure. If you're on the YouTube, by the way, hello. If anybody sees at any point us talking about comments that you guys can't see or whatever, it's because we're doing Discord and YouTube, so it's vice versa. We haven't pushed them together yet. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but we're figuring out. We're iterating. We appreciate all you guys being here. If you're on the YouTube, hey, if you're on YouTube, I apologize. By my rules, winter is November and December. January to March is spring. Exactly. Except it's super cold. Third Monday of January. Hi, what messenger is this? I love how the avatars are animated. Yeah, well, Devious Pizza. Hats off to Devious and Pizza. If you're on YouTube, Devious and Pizza have their avatars animated. That's their own doing. I think Devious, you're running yours in Game Maker, actually, right?
Well, I made one for Pizza. Pizza is using the same one. I just
nice.
edited it.
Yeah. That's really cool. Appreciate that effort, you guys. That they animated themselves, which is amazing. October is the only month of fall. Yeah, God, spring and autumn / fall feel real short. Okay, 6 past. We'll crack on. So today, welcome in everybody. We are talking about. We're doing a little UI deep dive here. So what does that even mean, UI deep dive, right? I mean, what are we doing? Well, we were considering different ways of doing it, presentation style or this style, discussion style. But we're going to start vague. We're going to start with opinions, right? We're gonna go in from there. So, the first question we want to ask, right, and this might seem real simple, but the first question we want to ask is, why do we need UI at all, right? Why are we? Just so you guys know, we can't hear Devious and Pizza on Discord side. Oh, interesting. Really?
Oh, really?
Yes, you're right.
Can you hear me now? It's because I was unmuted. That's probably why.
Devious, you're muted.
Why am I muted? Oh, I see. Okay. There we go.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Luckily, I was doing most of the speaking. But yeah. So the first question we want to ask is, why do we need UI? Right? Why do we even have UI? Before we even get into like what it is, I think we don't want to spend too much time talking about like what is it definition wise, because we kind of know intuitively what it is, right? But we want to. Well, maybe we'll get to that, but why do we need it?
Yeah.
Right. Leeson says it's important to have a good presentation of information. That's a great answer.
Agreed.
Devious Pizza, any more thoughts on that? Why do we have it?
Pretty much what
That's it, really? Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, it's just a way to convey information that, basically what
there we go, event
event over. Thanks for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. No. Keep track of information that can't be seen in game. That's a good answer as well, right? In game, by the way, for those who may be wondering, well, in game, out of game, we'll get to this as well. That's diegetic versus non-diegetic UI. I think a good example of that is how many kills you have in a shooter, right? That's the kind of thing that you'd pull up a little menu for to take a look at. And UX is more than UI, of course. Yeah, user experience.
Yeah. It's good to consider overlap between the two, but yeah, UX is different than UI.
Yeah, for sure. So, so that's pretty much why we need UI, right? We have information within the game that we need to present to the audience, right? So a good example of that information might be the controls. That's like the most basic one there is. How do you play the game? How do you interact with the game? How do you move left? How do you move right? A lot of games have recently BIM volume is really low. Anyone else experiencing that?
You sound fine to me.
Sound fine. Sorry, Alessandro. One thing you can do is if you right-click on my name in Discord, you can up my user volume to all the way to 200, if that helps. Oh, you already put the volume up? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Alessandro. It seems to be okay for everybody else. Hopefully that fixes itself. I'll try and speak a little closer to the mic if that helps. But yeah, right. So some common examples of this are, of course, controls. What other examples of basic information can we think of, Devious? What else other than controls? You put controls on the screen. What else we got?
Well, you have the HUD in general, the heads-up display, which is the typical stuff. Is you have your HP, you have maps, you have magic if you want to use that. You have any kind of weapons, spells, the tools you use. Oh man, it also depends on the game because there's different UIs for different kinds of games. That's like a whole other thing as well. Like in a Vampire Survivor type, you have the experience meter, which RPGs do have experience, but the meter isn't always shown.
Yeah.
Then you have games that are just all UI, which is like a whole other thing.
And maybe we'll get to that too. Yeah. Key bindings, inventory, health, info boxes. Yeah. So there's a whole load of stuff, and I think UI is important to think about, and it's important to spend more time on it than perhaps you might think you do, because first of all, as we were talking about briefly last week, it's actually a lot of fun. But the other thing is because you'd be surprised. I'm sure you guys probably been surprised. I've certainly surprised myself with what does and doesn't need UI. You know, many games, some of my favorite games, in fact, don't have any UI, which is crazy. That's crazy. Don't have any UI. That's nuts, and we'll get to that too. Balatro is 90% UI. I still haven't got around to playing that. I've heard it's very good. Evening, Darren. How you doing? Appreciate you being here. So just want to start by shouting out this website. You guys have probably heard of it before, but we're going to do it anyway. Game UI Database, for those of you who don't know, is a fantastic place to go to see how other games do it.
Non-sponsored.
It's non-sponsored. Yep, it's non-sponsored. It's free to use, right? But it's a great place to go, and you can look at stuff, everything, cutscenes, dialogue, tutorials, settings, menus. It pulls examples from all over the place, and you can see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, fantastic resource if you ever need it.
Yeah.
Like, I know I've used it a few times, and I was like, well, how do they do this? Or like, how does this particular kind of game do this kind of thing? And yeah, it always helps.
Yeah, certainly very useful. If there is a game that does something that you like, I, for one, I'll be like, oh, well, I got to go back and play it, and I got to, load up the game and do it, and then I end up getting distracted and just playing the game instead of studying it. Pawn takes pawn, use it a lot. Yeah, for sure. Part of UI is balance, showing every stat in the UI can overwhelm the player. Yeah, for sure. And with the balance of UI, we'll get to that. Happens a lot. Yeah, right. You go on a game for research purposes, and then you end up just playing the game. Okay, so before we started the stream here, Pizza and Devious were telling me about how everybody loves Persona 5 UI. First of all, what do you guys in the chat think? Have you played Persona 5? Do you agree? And the second thing is, other games you can think of that has some really good UI. But Devious Pizza, why is Persona 5 so good? What do you guys like about it? Is it breaks the rules?
Yeah, I agree.
Is this it? Have I got this correct?
Yeah, you want to kind of go to if you go to the battle section, type in. Oh wait, hold on. Go a bit further down.
A bit further down.
Maybe see if there's a battle. There's a section where it shows perhaps a battle. Yeah, here.
Well, maybe Game UI Database doesn't have everything, but it's good UI for a game. Mixed Feelings there by Dr. Puzzler. Really, Persona 5 is the game I wish I was talented enough to have made. Interesting. Thank you, Darren, by the way, for the link to the website. It slipped my mind completely there. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And we'll actually post that as well in the YouTube chat for those who are over there. Okay, so Persona 5. So, Devious, you said it breaks the rules. What do you mean by that? Elaborate.
Okay, so typically, when you look at UI, it follows some design rules to keep it consistent and whatnot. But what Persona does is it sort of goes wild with its design. It's still consistent, though. That's the thing. It's consistently inconsistent in specific points. And because of the difference, and it's so unique, it makes people remember it a lot more, which is why a lot of people reference it.
Right. So from what I can see here, it's kind of this semi-diegetic, semi-non-diegetic. Well, actually, no, it's technically all non-diegetic, isn't it? Because none of that's kind of in the game world, but it's a kind of what, like a blend of different. I mean, it's very engaging. I got to say, it's actually
it's very striking.
It certainly piqued my interest. Yeah.
I've never played a Persona game, but I've always appreciated the UI design.
The absolute pizzazz and game juice that the UI has is incredible.
Oh yeah, when it's in movement, oh man, it's great.
But from a readability / accessibility standpoint, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what my point is. Yeah.
So why is it not readable? Let's take an example. What's a good example of?
I just take any of them.
Just any of them, really.
Yeah. So how I was saying, it's inconsistent, but it's consistent with the inconsistency. Even though it is consistent with its inconsistency, it is still inconsistent. So it jumbles the eyes a little if you're not used to it and you don't know how to follow it. And then it's it's like an acquired taste kind of thing. You have to get used to this kind of the style they're going for to follow the way. Because, typical UI follows patterns and stuff in it. It's easier to follow to see what's related and what's not related. When you start getting inconsistent, then you start breaking the rules, then you start breaking that pattern recognition that we have. that we're used to, and that causes us to get a little confused between the what's going on. But how it works is because we do have those patterns that we recognize, we can associate the aspects of those patterns, like how it shows here. It shows like, you know, the well, yeah, I don't know how. I don't know. Remember, I've never played the game, so I don't know how to read this as an example.
Right.
But if I was playing the game, then it would make more sense because I know what it's referencing and whatnot, and then we take systems that we know how to use.
Yeah, but even like someone who has played the Persona games, it can still be very like at times like hard to read. But it's not like in a bad way. It's still like really cool, and I love the UI and stuff. But like when it comes to like the font choice and like sometimes font color going over a certain color, it doesn't quite work sometimes. But it's not necessarily bad in terms of overall. It's just like in terms of like, for instance, the system thing, like, you know, where it's like cut out and stuff. It's a bit like I would rather if it just be like one color, you know, rather than it like be like on and off kind of thing.
So Mauler, you've got a good point there. I would say it doesn't direct your focus onto the important information. So that's a really good point. Yeah. So you know when you look at a piece of UI, right? When you like, and this website is really good for that, right? UI database. You can pull up these still images. You know, you want to ask yourself, where is the eye drawn to first? What are you looking at, right? And somebody mentioned a second ago, Baki mentioned leading lines. Devious, you said yes and no. What do you mean?
Yeah. So, well, I argue against what they said, but sometimes that is true. Like in the case of this screen right here, there's so much information right here, and because you're also trying to parse it in your head, it causes a bit of an information overload, especially if you don't know how to read this.
Yeah. I mean, I got no idea what's going on
here. Yeah, if you but this is what I also meant about being consistently inconsistent. They emphasize certain parts. So like the bigger things are the things that they're emphasizing. So you see that big old rank 1 right there.
Yeah.
And it's like yellow, so it sort of pulls the eye. And then you have the lovers part, and then there's definitely problems with it.
So is it one of those creative choices, do you think, that sort of makes the game what it is? You know, is it a UI decision?
Definitely.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And also the in terms of the fan base for Persona, they're known for this. Like even like the game that had just come out, which isn't Persona related, but like the Metaphor game that's just come out, like it's a completely different aesthetic because this is more like it feels more like a comic book type like cartoony style, whereas the Metaphor game is completely different. And they're known for this style, even the earlier Persona games. So they've just ran with it because it's what people seem to like and enjoy. So they've just continued it. And I think even the creator has said how much work goes into simply just the UI itself.
It looks like it,
and it's a lot of work. And I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he says like I wouldn't recommend this to people. Like the amount of work it is, it's not recommended kind of thing.
Yeah, if you've looked at any of the so they have they've iterated so much that they have old, like, I don't think it's in here, but they have the old design somewhere. I know I've seen them. I don't know where they are right now, but you can see how they're like messing around and like moving things around and stuff. So you have to everything you do, everything you move with this style in particular, if you misalign certain things, it'll pretty much throw off a good chunk of the readability. But they do sacrifice with this style some of the readability. But so like in this case, your focus goes to the yes or no, but the yes and no are both white, and so is the box. So then you have like a bit of a clashing problem there. But I think it does it well enough.
Well, like you say, it's a creative decision for the game itself, right? It's something that it's not like they've got a really good game or a bad game. It's not even like they've got a game under the UI. The UI is very much part of the game, which is interesting. I don't know if that's I don't know. Is that a liberty us indie devs often sort of can take? I don't know. You know, that's certainly not something I've thought about, is incorporating. Well, actually, I don't know, Pizza, because you were working on a game, weren't you, that had now I see it, a very similar UI to this.
Yeah, well, it was inspired by this.
Right. Yeah. But
and I would say as well with the Persona 5 games, I mean, I'm not saying this is a defense for this choice, but like Persona 5 especially, a big portion of the game isn't even like the fighting aspect. A lot of it is just like walking around the school that you go to, speaking to people. So a lot of it is a lot easier to like kind of digest because it's basically just like dialogue boxes that are consistent because you just read in dialogue boxes and stuff.
Yeah,
it's the battles that can be a bit like tedious, especially near the end when you need to rely on those crucial information of like what is the weaknesses and stuff like that for like the enemy that you're fighting. That's when it can be a bit, but it's still like an amazing game. Yeah,
because it's crazy, isn't it? Because when I look at this is not something that I would think was sort of AAA standard. You know, this sort of looks very thrown together. It looks very
I think
chaotic.
It wants to rebel against, like we were talking about, like it goes against everything we think of. It kind of the aesthetic kind of works with it as well, right? Because it feels like a rebellion kind of font and stuff like that. You think of like the punk era of like music and stuff. It feels very like that kind of, you know. So like it kind of works really well together. But I can understand from like someone who has issues reading and stuff how this would be like, you know.
Yeah,
not great for
off-putting, perhaps. Thematically, it works with the game. Exactly, Dr. Puzzler. So speaking of diegetic and non-diegetic UI, so we're saying that this is pretty much 100% non-diegetic. Is that right, Devious? What do you think? This is external to the game?
It's another one of those like weird ones. Well, I call it non-diegetic because they're not aware of the
UI's existence. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, for sure. And somebody in the chat, I think it was Darren, actually was talking about Dead Space a minute ago, which we'll move on to in a second, is a really good example of diegetic UI. Inscription is also a good example of diegetic UI. We'll get to that too. Yeah, so this is Persona's interesting. So everybody, you know, we're talking about how it's chaotic and consistently inconsistent. So sort of before we move on from it then, so if it's got so many problems, right, if it rebels against, if it's kind of hard to read, you know, why is it so loved then? Is it because of how memorable it is? Is it because of how unique it is? Is that what we're thinking?
I think also the game itself, just generally gameplay-wise, is super interesting to players.
So the game supports the UI rather than...
Yeah. But it's good to look at, right? You know, like you look at these stills and they really like, they catch your attention over like another, like if you think of any JRPG game, like not saying the other JRPG games are necessarily bad, but when you compare it to like games that are exactly a similar genre, that stands out a bit more and it captures your attention a bit more.
Yeah. So moving on to Dead Space, as somebody mentioned a minute ago, I think diegetic versus non-diegetic UI is a question.
Well,
how do I phrase this?
For example, look at him. He's looking at the screen. He's aware.
Yes, he's aware of the existence of the screen and of the inventory. Right, like he's looking at it. If you played the game, you know, and someone said generic UI in a 3D space. Is that a description of Dead Space? Sorry. Fallout Pip-Boy is another. Yes, exactly. Another good example.
Another good
Metro Exodus. I don't know if anybody's played it. Has something similar, which is really cool. So why do one or the other? Why do one or the other?
More immersive.
Right. More immersive.
Immersion. Yeah.
Right. So immersion is the name of the game when it comes to diegetic versus non-diegetic, and that's a good point. Although, would we say that does it always succeed? What do we think? Is this the Dead Space UI, right? The way that it, just because it appears in the game, right, and the characters are aware of it, does that mean that the design of the UI lends itself to something that's immersive, or do we think that actually that backfires?
There's a sacrifice when you go with diegetic UI, and that's designing the UI to work in the world. So when you do a regular UI, you can like mess around more with like the basic stuff, but when you do this kind of thing, you have to be aware of things like clipping, like it can just clip through the thing. There's ways around that, but you got to be aware of things like clipping, the way, in this case, the background, because it has a little bit of opacity to it. If you use this on certain backgrounds, it'll not look great.
So good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so honestly, the design portion, if you go diegetic, designing the UI is probably the more difficult part. Well, yeah. And because it also has to make sense in the world. So, you know, he can't just have like a like the world it has to influence the UI in this case, because it, you know, he's a, what was he? He's like
he's a miner, I think.
Miner, yeah.
Mining. And that's a really good point. It has to fit within the constraints of the world. You know, why would, and I mean, it matters less but you do have to consider things such as why would this guy or girl or character, have this piece of technology, right? Why would they have this weapons inventory system, right? Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because while you do have to lend some thought to that, I think people are pretty forgiving. Okay, if most players anyway, even the ones who appreciate the diegetic nature of the UI aren't going to question, okay, why does this character have access to these tools? Because they understand that it's a video game. Having said that, you can go over the edge and it can be too extreme. But I think, Divish, you brought up a couple of other really good points that are maybe slightly more pressing, actually, maybe more so than story-wise, is overlapping, is fitting it within the screen, is fitting it within the game world in a way that doesn't overlap important things, or is you're going to get confused between background colors and whatever, right? Because when you have non-diegetic UI, it's basically a whole other system within the game. You can pause the game, you can black it out, you can bring up another menu, right? Whereas you've got to build diegetic UI to fit within the world, not just thematically but visually, and that's arguably the hardest part.
Another thing about this particular Dead Space is the game doesn't pause when you're in the UI.
Yes,
if I remember right.
Yes, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Which is, I like that actually. I do like the lack of pausing with the UI.
Yeah. And when you if you're in the UI and you get hit, it does a little like flicker thing, and like, and then he's like, oh, whatever, which is like a great little detail, because like, when you think about it, you also have to take that in consideration if your game's not paused.
Sure.
And how do you break
what happens in a dynamic situation? Yeah, exactly. For those who don't know as well, although most of us definitely do, this the 4 blue tube things on the back of his character is the health bar, and every hit you take, it goes down. Which is that stuff like that, little things like health, stamina, maybe. I think those kind of things are way better as diegetic UI. If you can find a way to incorporate health, stamina, things like that. Inventory systems, that's a little harder, right? Some games, a game that does inventory digest, well, you guys can tell me if you think it's diegetic or not. But The Forest, I really hope this is
that would be
age appropriate. Because obviously there's some.
Actually,
is that going to come up?
That's a tough one actually.
Might not come up. We'll find it. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. When he opens his sack.
He opens his sack. It's kind of a different menu, right? And it's a different game world. So I don't know if you can be hitting stuff while you're in the inventory. I don't know if you can. Maybe somebody can correct me on that.
There's no way to pause when you're like, this doesn't pause the game, because you can do it in like multiplayer and stuff.
True. Yeah. So I'm guessing you probably still can be attacked. And
I actually don't know what happens when you get hit.
Interesting.
In your menu.
I disliked this one, but it was unique. I agree with that. Pawn takes pawn. Actually, I remember the first time I played the only time I played the Forest, I suppose. I did not actually appreciate this at all. I thought it was very confusing. I didn't think it was signposted very well.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like they went too
diegetic. Yeah.
Because like it makes sense. You have all your stuff, and you don't really like, you can't really like separate it fully. It's all together sort of. Yeah. And they do sort of separate it, but it's like in little groupings, and some things
drag
are too
stuff
close.
And move it around. Yeah. And then they've got, in spite of their efforts at making this as diegetic as possible, they have to have the mouse with the explanation over the top of it. So they've kind of gone really far in one way, but sort of in a way that hasn't allowed them to go all the way or in the correct way. I personally didn't like this one, but there are ways of doing. It's a good example of a game that did do diegetic inventory, which I thought was really interesting. They also have diegetic crafting, right? They have this book that the character opens that you choose stuff from and stuff like that. Yeah, and I actually, honestly, you know what? I'm sorry, fans of The Forest, but I didn't like most of their diegetic stuff. To be honest, I thought that it was too confusing. I like the game, not criticizing the game, but the kind of menu systems and stuff, I just thought, oof.
What's interesting as well with the crafting is that, like, so I've never played The Forest.
Very good.
So I don't know whether, like, if when it gets dark, will you not be able to see this? Because, like, for instance, in Silent Hill 2, he brings out the map. Can't remember if it's in the remake, but like when you bring out the map and see it, the only way you can see that map is if you go under like a light to see it, which adds like the survival aspect. So I don't know whether that does it in this. I don't know whether you...
Well, this one does. Yeah, this blue thing at the top is like a little light that shines down on it. But you're right. Yeah, and actually that's a really good example. That's a really good. That would be that example you just brought up sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
I really like
because it's
that.
like in that game you're like trying to find where you go in, but like most of the place is dark, right? So you're just having to like find a light so that you can shine your map under so you can see where you're going. I think it's the original Silent Hill 2 that does it, not necessarily the remake. I can't remember if they kept it or not, but yeah, it definitely adds like the tension, right?
I think didn't Amnesia do that as well? You had to have the lantern out in order to read the map, or be in a light source or something. Which I actually do really like that, but
it's fitting, right? Because you want it to. So, for instance, in the Silent Hill 2, it makes sense because it's meant to be a survival horror game. So you want it to feel. Same when we were talking about the Dead Space, you want it to feel in the world. So aesthetically, it makes sense. Whereas, like if you were to put that in a game that isn't quite like that, where you don't feel like, oh, you're looking at this map quick before enemies attack you, then it can feel a bit weird. But like you want it to feel like for the genre that you're making as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk now. Why would you pick one over the other, right? Dr. Puzzler earlier was saying how difficult diegetic UI is, and we agree with him. You know, it is harder to implement, right? It takes a little bit more outside the box thinking, or rather in this case, kind of inside the box thinking. But you know, why? How would you know? Right? What do you guys think the thought process is on that? Should we always strive for diegetic and then have to revert to non-diegetic where possible? Obviously, you know, the age-old answer is, well, it depends on the game, right? But from a more practical perspective, what do we think? You know, is it always better if you can pull it off? Is that a hard question?
Well, that's actually a tough question because if you can pull it off, then it's great. But if you can't, then it becomes a problem. Like it becomes cumbersome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like the forest, for example.
Yeah, like the forest. Right? Yeah, and then back then.
You end up with
some games don't need it, right? Like some games, it's better to just have a menu just pop up. Whereas,
honestly, the forest just did it. I don't want to say bad, but they did it in a poorer way than they should have because of the.
Well, it's certainly unique for sure.
But but they could have like assorted it, or like someone said, you can move stuff around. If you'd be able to like move things around and place it where you want, or something like that. But so the problem is just the finding the stuff. Otherwise you had to be fine, and then having to drag it over there. And
Sher's just said exactly as some of the examples have shown, diegetic design can make it harder to understand what you're looking at. So that's exactly it. Yeah, you know, the benefit of non-diegetic is so we're basically balancing immersion with clarity. Might be a good way of thinking about it. Form versus function, right? Yes, that's one way too. I think I would think the diegetic, when done right, adds a little more immersion and time tension to the game. Some that don't have it and don't need to be there, so they can have a bit of comparison. Yeah, so you know, okay, so you're making your game and you're thinking, right, do I want diegetic UI? Do I want non-diegetic UI? Should I put the health bar in the game, or should the health bar be sort of a separate bar on the screen? Well, okay, the first thing you need to think about is, you know, how do you want your player to feel? Right, we're not going to walk through this whole process, but some pointers in case you're sort of not sure where to go or what you should try and do. The first one is, how do you want your players to feel moment to moment? Right, if you got a horror game, I think almost every horror game benefits from
just more immersion in the horror.
Right, more immersion, less breathing room. Right, if you have to open a backpack and ruffle through it, but you can be attacked by enemies while you're doing it, I think is
one of those
always,
things we talked about in the last event. Action, doing it, making yourself vulnerable.
Sure, vulnerability, exactly. Yes, and I think Resident Evil, I don't know, someone correct me if I'm wrong, in the later Resident Evil games, I think they had a blend of that because I think you can the UI is non-diegetic, but you're still vulnerable while you use it, I think. I'm not sure if
that's pause when
does it pause?
Yeah,
maybe that's an option. I'm not sure.
Well, there's like the quick bar, and then there's this thing.
Yeah, maybe that's true. I'm not sure actually. Neither is better or worse. It's entirely dependent on your goals as a designer and the kind of game you're making. Bad UI creates bad UX, regardless of the specifics.
Yeah.
Dr. Puzzle, of course, you're absolutely right. Yes, at the end of the day, it does just depend on the game. Event over, by the way. No, but yeah. So the first thing I want to consider is, what kind of mood are you trying to bring about? How immersive do you want your experience to be? Something else that you might want to consider. I don't know what you guys' opinions are on this. I don't have any. I'm just sort of speaking into the void about this, really, but. Does diegetic versus non-diegetic have anything to do with how much information you need to present to the player? Right? Do you guys think that with less information, a simpler game perhaps, it's more beneficial to be diegetic because there's less to, give out?
Argue it's easier, quotes, if there's less information you need to give. Because, there's less elements you need to toy with to actually work in the world.
Yeah. Amount of information is a factor, at least, for sure. Yeah, the more information you have to display, you match that with the fact that diegetic UI can often lead to a lack of clarity, and then you've got this, downward spiral, which is not great. It's definitely easier, not always better. Amount of information is a factor, at least. You should also maybe consider how long it would take you to implement this kind of thing. Sometimes if we're crunching on time, or we don't have many hours in the day, or whatever it is, maybe you don't want to spend the extra 2 hours to make it in the game when it could be non-diegetic or vice versa, right? You want to consider that. Can also depend on the type of game. A pixel stylized 2D side scroller might be more difficult to implement diegetic elements, for example. Well, in that case, yeah, they're kind of both the same thing, right? Many retro pixel games are hard enough to read as they are. Yeah, that's also true. Let's take a look at some of those, because we've been looking.
The thing that always happens with diegetic UI, by the way, is you always lose space. So, in order for it to make sense in the world, you have to fill in space with the world. So, like the elements of the world.
Yes.
Like if you look in all these examples of diegetic UI, you'll see like they have less space because like either the hands have to show something holding something, or there's got to be like ground around it on the tarp with the backpack over there that doesn't do anything. And then and if you look at the Dead Space one, because it's a screen in the world, you have to be able to see Isaac and then other things. Although when you go on like a different thing, like a computer, it'll show it and it'll zoom in more.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, just back you. Will the replay be on YouTube? Yes, the live streams they're all uploaded to YouTube just automatically. So yes, if you need to leave or come back and rewatch stuff, absolutely no worries. You can do that. It'll be on YouTube. Pixel Games. Thanks for hanging, Becky. Appreciate it. Pixel Games has been wanting to add pixel fonts on everything. That's another thing. Yeah. Anyone got any examples of pixel games you want to look at? More low end, not low end. What am I trying to say? Smaller scale. Kind of 2D stuff. I've obviously got Don't Starve on the screen, but any examples of that?
Inside and Limbo. Someone mentioned Inside and Limbo, which is a good example.
Just gave me an idea. Pixel game without pixel fonts. Hollow Knight. We'll take a look at that too. But yeah, Inside doesn't really have any UI actually. That's what I was referring to earlier. Need it. Yeah,
it's pure platformer.
It relies on the fact that you probably know how to play the game from other platformers, which is really interesting. There's like no pictures. I like this. God, I didn't even think about this. It shows a color palette at the top of the page. It's pretty cool. Yeah, there's like no UI at all. It's all. There's just none. Yeah, which again, interesting. And I think this will bring us on to a topic in a minute. Do we all? Well, I suppose now. I guess we could talk about it for a second. If you don't need the UI, should it be there? Maybe that's a leading question, right? Maybe the immediate answer to that is well, no. But then you could argue, okay, well, you probably don't need controls on your screen, depending on the kind of game you're making, of course. But people always put the controls, right? So I don't know.
I would say possibly yes, still have it, because you could always give the player the option to turn it off if they want to, right?
Right.
So for instance, like in Silent Hill 2 Remake, there's two options where it's like the hardest difficulty has like no UI and you have to rely on sounds and stuff. But then if you want the easier mode, it shows you ammo, it shows your health and stuff like that, so it's easier to manage. And the thing is, it helps you as a developer, right? Because you're still going to possibly have it as like maybe like debugging stuff, right? So you could still potentially have it as UI there, and then if you don't want it in the final product, have it off. And then if you want the player to have the ability to turn it on, they can do it that way.
Yeah. Horizon has some details. Sorry, I got a YouTube comment in my head and a Discord one at the same time. I'll do the Discord first, I'll go to YouTube. Horizon has some detail elements. It blends out and fades them back in when you swipe the touchpad. Not every game needs to be immersive, says Joe. Yeah, absolutely. If this is something that you feel you're going to spend too much time in, or it doesn't matter so much, then of course, it's not like Dr. Puzzler's been saying. There is no better. It is just dependent and different. Generally, I would put my opinion forth that I think that the less UI you can put in the game, the better for me. I think I've not, obviously depends on the game. If you're playing a strategy game, like Cher's saying, maybe that's different. But my general rule of thumb, and also just for my enjoyment, that's not some piece of like game design wisdom, but just when I'm playing a game, I prefer it. The less there is on screen, and I'll talk about a tragic case study in a minute.
I was going to say to like add to that, it all depends on also the genre, right? So like if I'm playing a multiplayer game, a competitive, I want as much information on that screen as possible. If I'm playing like a single player where I want to immerse with the world, then I want to be more immersive. So like for instance, I'm playing Marvel Rivals at the moment a lot. Like I want to know like how much time I've got until I can use the ability again. I don't want it like in some like in the suit or anything. I would rather just visually see it so I can look down, check, and then I know. Whereas if it's in a single player game, it's slightly different, preference there.
Yeah. So we'll move the topic on in just a second. There was a Discord comment I wanted to. Sorry, YouTube comment. UI seems like an advanced enough topic to the point it needs a very specialized field. I mainly focus on gameplay, and UI is definitely the most tedious, at least for you. What's the option for people like you? Should you ask someone to do it for you, or should you learn UI? Just honestly depends. That's not the answer you want to hear, probably. But
two parts of that.
Yeah.
There's a difference between UI design and actually programming the UI. You can, when you go to like bigger studios, then you have people that design it, and you have people that actually code it. So it is a specialized field if you get more advanced into it. But there's like all game development aspects, there's levels to it.
Of course.
When you start getting things like really complicated, then that's when you need to start thinking about someone or really focusing on learning it. But if you're doing like typically for indies, we don't need to, because it's typically, not always, very basic kind of things like HP, magic, like the stuff I mentioned earlier with the maps and all that. Just some tooltips, like that's basic stuff. When you start having like inventories, it gets a little. That's when you start getting in. That's like the next level of complicated. And then from there, you have a bunch of other. Basically, the more items you have, the more complicated it gets.
Yeah, for sure. And you also want to consider when it comes to complexity. Hackett, you said a good point. Programming the UI is an important part of the UX, right? Because how the UI looks, how it comes onto the screen, how it fades in, fades out, how it interacts, how you interact with it, and it interacts with you is a huge part of almost the gameplay to an extent, right? So if you're sort of keen, Curtis Legend, if you're keen on focusing on gameplay and stuff like that, maybe don't necessarily split the UI and the gameplay apart so much, but maybe actually try and bring them together and think about, okay, how can I sort of blend these factors? And if you're really struggling and stuff like that, then of course reach out for help by all means. But yeah, you don't need to sort of hire somebody else necessarily to do the UI for you. Cher says it's good to know the basics, so at least you can have conversations with experts. Exactly. Yeah. If you do need to reach out, it's good to have a base level of understanding. Okay, what was I about to say? I was about to make a point before that, but I've forgotten what it was. God damn it. Consistency, having a consistent UI is very important. I was thinking of that. Feedback was what I was going to talk about. UI feedback. Now, Devious Oatmeal here with us is an absolute king when it comes to UI with good feedback. And Devious, I mean, feel free to plug if you want. I don't know if you've got like a page.
I'm working on some right now, but no links to it. Just
Well,
something new.
Something new. But Devious is an absolute king when it comes to UI with good feedback. Now, what does that mean? Devious, walk us through that. Why is that so important to you? And why
Man, this is probably like one of the most important.
Without spending the next 2 hours on it, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm gonna. It's very simple stuff. That's the thing. It's very simple, but it's very important. Things like hovering over a button, making sure it like highlights and stuff. When you do an action and you choose when you click a button or select an option, you want the player to be able to follow what's happening. So like if it takes them to a different menu or something, you want them to be able to go back and repeat that step to get back to the thing. You do not want navigation of the UI to be confusing, and I've played so many games where this just pissed me off because like the game was like decent, and then like just navigating the UI was just a damn headache. Right. But there's also another thing is consideration between controller and mouse, because there's big differences, and some UI can't be used together when you do this, but you sort of make it work. But that's like that's another design aspect of whenever you're doing it, because you want to decide whether or not you want controller support and mouse support, or if you want to pick a specific one. Because if you choose mouse support, or if you focus on only mouse, then you have a little bit more freedom to move things around. That's like dragging and dropping. You can't do that with a controller. You can like select things and move things around or whatever, but you have a little more freedom to be like have a UI in different kinds of places. But when you go controller, then you have that. I don't know. To me, whenever you do controller, it feels a little more consistent. Like it feels more like a controller. It's ergonomic.
Right.
Yeah, feedback. Just
yes, that's a good point for those who are listening. That's a good point to consider. And I think it's very easy to get lost in the, you think, okay, I'm making a PC game, so I'm gonna, focus on PC interface, right, mouse and keyboard and stuff like that. I mean, there's a whole, relationship between using the mouse versus using the keyboard, etc. That's a huge thing. But obviously, you want to consider, okay, what about mobile users? Are you going to publish a game onto to mobile platforms, right? That's a whole other thing, right? Because that's tiny screen. But then, obviously controllers, if you have a controller, try plugging it in. Does it work with that? I mean, maybe, you're not even going to consider that, but it's something to think about, right? It's a very different experience moving the joystick with your thumb versus moving your mouse with your whole wrist, right? And you might think on the programming level, oh, it's the same thing because it's just moving a cursor around on the screen, but it feels very different. So it's very important to consider when designing.
Also, when it to do with like controls as well. Let's say you want to give the player the ability to change the controls on a controller as well, right?
Right.
All the UI in terms of this is a whole, because this is something that I've been like, but like for instance, if you've got any like icons that are showing like the buttons you're using and being able to change that with the player, if they're able to change, say, the jump to a different button, having that change as well, that's like a whole different thing. But again, you have to have this in mind like really early on, I think, because from personal experience, if you don't, it spends even more. You're spending way more time having to like then change everything again.
Yeah, for sure. So just on screen, I think as an example, this is a Wii game, I think, but as an example of, I think it's like, but as an example of good, or maybe it's not loading. I don't know.
Oh, no.
But assuming that I'm still speaking properly, you can still hear me.
You are.
Use UI database. Just go over the top with the feedback. Honestly, right? I think going back to UI feedback, start too much and then reel it in. Right? I would say. I think don't start with too little, because then it kind of feels weird if you kind of scale up from there. Maybe it'll start to feel cartoonish or something. But I would, I'd begin with make, whenever you're highlighting something, first of all, highlight it, make the text bigger, put a box around it, dim everything else that's not being selected. And then if that feels too much, then work backwards, rather than going the other way. But Devious, you were saying you've sort of got a lot of experience with that. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
Wait,
as a process? The process, sort of starting too big and scaling back.
So when you're designing the UI, you have to keep tooltips in mind. So like Pizza mentioned the button thing, you have to put the button prompts like somewhere, So when you don't take that into account, and let's say you made a mouse and keyboard thing, and you're like, oh, I want to add controller support. Well, if you don't leave room to put in those new buttons and stuff, it'll mess with like the placements of the UI and stuff. You might have to change some things. Then there's
That's
also
a good point too. Yeah.
And then there's so much I can go start. I think the question in Discord is a good segue.
Okay. What was it? Where were we? The question in Discord. Sorry, Davis.
Plenty of games I played where I had to fight. Yeah, or the UI gave too much info in the place where it felt overwhelming.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So
you can't go too far. Overwhelming UI. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that too because I played a lot of games during the feedback events we've had here, but also in other servers. You know, one of the things that we often give feedback on is that what's it called? Onboarding, right? Is I think that's what it is. Introducing people to a game. You know, I think that's something that a lot of people, especially early on, make a mistake with is just throw all the information at you to begin with, and it can be very overwhelming. Even if I took the time to read it, I would fully understand your game, and it's all very simple. If just at a glance, there's loads of stuff on the screen, I'm already overwhelmed, right? Even if, like I said, reading it would actually be okay. So you want to be careful with that kind of thing. Mauler, you were just saying, please don't go full fantasy. Start online 2 with UI feedback where every action, every button makes a noise. Deadlock, you were saying, has overwhelming UI when you first start playing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
Did
Deadlock is... It's not necessarily the UI, it's just the way they...
I've never played it, so I don't know.
So I can't find it on here, actually.
So the best way to... so the issue I had was you have to, like, when you defeat enemies, whether they're AI or other players, you get essentially souls that you can buy on, like, abilities and stuff. But they just show you this entire, like, map of abilities that you can buy, and you've got, like, the beginning game, mid game, end game, that kind of stuff. What you can do, which I didn't know until way later, is that players can create builds basically telling you want to buy this, this, and this at this section, this, sell this. Where, like, in the beginning, it's something that isn't quite clear that you can do that. So, like, when I started playing, I'm like, what do I buy? And it's terrible. Let me see if I can pull it up, because it's worth showing, because it can be a bit crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those.
I have 2 minutes. Deadlock can confirm. Even just 2 minutes was enough to put you off. Yeah, you get used to playing after a lot, but it's very overwhelming at first. It is an alpha, though. Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, like we were saying, you know, it's sort of immediately one of the things that it's UI and onboarding, especially, is, you know, you're more than likely to get it wrong. One of the first things you get wrong is how much information you're giving to your players and how much.
I've got it up if you want to switch the screen.
Oh yeah, sure, no worries.
But, like, do you see how, like, it just shows you all this, right? And you're just like,
that's awful.
What do I buy? Like, and that's only, like, one section. So that's for, like, your spirits. Then you got your vitality, you got your weapons. So that's an entirely other thing. But you can create. There is a section which is on the left, essentially, where players will make builds for you just to tell you what to do. Because from, like, just entering the game, right, it's just, like, it can get a bit, like, chaotic, right? And also, not just that, but, like, you're looking at that, then you have to deal with, like, hovering over it, and then that it gives you, like, a tooltip of a bunch of other information, being like, it does this, but then it also doesn't do this, it's against this, and it's just like, yeah, it can be a lot. But again, once you get used to it, it's easy to digest. But again, you don't want that kind of thing from a player who wants to play a game. You want the onboarding to be great for the player. You don't want just to show this and expect the player to be like, okay, I'm just gonna try and battle through this UI to figure out what to do. You know?
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about this or
onboarding?
Because this is like a whole thing.
It's a sort of sub. Yeah, it is. You're right. It's a sort of slightly different. What do you guys think? You guys want to delve into onboarding for sort of...
I love onboarding, by the way. It's another aspect.
Yeah, well, exactly. We can do an onboarding deep dive as the next event, actually, to be honest. But actually, what I want to do is actually ask before then. You know, one thing we usually do at the start of events is talk about sort of favorite and not favorite, games and UIs and stuff like that. what are some of you guys' favorite UIs? Right, and I don't mean necessarily good UIs, but UIs that have stuck with you, UIs that have felt good to you. You know, UI systems that you know you remember because you'd enjoyed interacting with them, kind of independently of whether or not they're sort of objectively any good. So, for example, for me, you know, I'm a huge fan for some reason of the Resident Evil 7 and maybe 8 as well. I'm not sure if they continued it in Village, but the inventory system in Resident Evil 7. There was just something about, you know, it may not even look that great, whatever your opinions are on how it looks. Oh, sorry, I'm still sharing Peter's screen here. But whatever you thought about what it looked like, for me, the way it felt was really good. The noise that it made when you moved around the icons, right? So this is obviously delving into the, you know, dipping our toes a little bit into game feel, right? But you know, all game aspects are kind of
UX.
UX is important to UI. Maybe we'll do a UX deep dive next too. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Should.
But yeah, I think it just goes to show, or it went to show me actually, that even if the UI necessarily doesn't even matter that much, as long as the experience of interacting it feels good. At least that was my takeaway from it. Which is very important.
It still needs to look like, you know, decent.
Yeah, of course.
What they wanted here was a minimalist design, which is great. Yeah. Well, some people hate minimalism, but boo on them.
Yeah, but in this, well, exactly, boo on them. The Division, Darren, you were saying? Let's have a look. What was it about the Division? Tom Clancy's The Division?
Oh, yeah, that was another one. With another diegetic. I think diegetic? I can't remember.
What are we looking at here? This kind of thing?
I think it's a bit of both. No, you want to go in...
when you're actually in the game.
Sorry, my bad. Shout at me when you get this.
Yeah, there you go.
He like looks at it, but
right. So it's quite similar to Dead Space, actually, isn't it? That's a sort of a Dead Space kind of vibe. Over the shoulder, third. You know, he's looking at it. That's good. That's good. Was it what was it about the UI that you like so much, Darren? If you could elaborate on that.
I also want to mention. So this is a little form thing. So in Dead Space, he opens a little like thing, and that's what the projection comes out of. But in there, you know, he's just looking at a like, where's that coming from? It's a small thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Into the Breach, said Liaison. Hence why we're here. I've actually never played Into the Breach. I've heard very good things about it.
But, a little, but it's great.
It's great. Is it really?
It's more a puzzle game than it is a strategy game, I guess. If you want to.
I find it's from experience in making 2D games, especially Pixar games, but also playing them. I find that it's honestly, if a 2D game like this, right? Like technically this is isometric, whatever, right? Can do UI really well. It has my respect. For some reason, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because UI and the game are both 2D, right? I just find it so much more overwhelming to look at. Even just this, to be honest, in my personal opinion. But I think that's just me. I think that's probably why I personally prefer 3D games. But I find this kind of thing really difficult to. Well, I mean, this is pretty good looking at it, but
the thing about this is when you go strategy, that's when you start getting like heavy UI elements because there's so much information you have to keep track of.
Yeah.
So if you like a civilization, then you have like colony builders, you have like all these like UI elements because you have to keep track of all that stuff. If you're talking like a shooter, then you know you just need like the ammo that you have in your HP.
Yeah.
And I guess a map.
And it's also more obvious. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's more obvious what is and isn't UI too. You know, if you want to separate it out, you can have the 2D and the 3D world, which is to your advantage. Darren was just saying a lot of it was pie chart selection of weapons, etc. Quick to select, but only on a lot of screens. Pie chart selection of weapons. Darren, are you a fan of that? I don't know. I've not been. Am I a fan of pie chart weapon selection? That's
pie chart.
Pie
like
chart
a
weapon
wheel?
selection is like it's like
the wheel.
Oh, okay.
I look at GTA. Sorry if any inappropriate. Come on, bruh. What is it not gonna?
Oh, really?
Grand Theft. Oh, of course. You got to sort of type it in. Apologies for any maybe adult content you might see. It is Grand Theft Auto after after all. But where's there should be a weapon wheel on here somewhere. And there isn't. Okay, wonderful. Oh yeah, here it is.
There is.
This kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know. Goodness, I couldn't decide if I like this or not. I'm not sure. It's not sure.
It makes sense. Go ahead, Pizza.
I was just gonna say I do like this kind of stuff in first-person shooters like Doom and stuff like that. I want to be able to have the game slow motion whilst I'm selecting as well. I don't want to have it like, for instance, when we talk about Dead Space, where like you can get attacked. I'd rather because I've played some games which do this, and it's like similar to the Dead Space where like everything's still happening. Whereas like in Doom and stuff like that, it can slow down whilst you're selecting, and I do like it in those kind of games.
Yeah,
because you constantly needing to switch constantly, and you need a ton of weapons as well, especially when you're playing on like a harder difficulty. You want to be able to switch to match what enemy you're fighting, and especially near the end when you have like maybe like 15 and 20 different enemies that are like changing. You want to be able to switch a lot easier. Well, in GTA, I feel it can be a bit, I don't know.
Yeah, it's but why a wheel, right? Why not a list? Why not just have it pop up on the site? It's quicker.
Yeah, it's quicker because the analog stick, right?
Yep, that's a really good answer. Yeah, that links back to considering what kind of console. Are you playing on a console? You're playing on mobile, right? They thought, right, we're gonna sell on console here primarily. I don't know what the sales numbers were, but obviously they had console in mind. And it's probably even quick. It's probably just as quick on PC. I suppose everything is equally quick on PC, isn't it? Because it's just mouse movement flicking it around. But on console for sure.
I will say this looks a little. My experience with the wheel and the mouse, it's more annoying
because it's more sensitive. I find. Yeah.
Yeah.
But GTA weapon wheels are good. Somebody said fast FTL Grand Blue Fantasy. Relink has some pretty inconsistent inventory shop lists, which makes some of them rather hard to read. Grand Blue Fantasy, interesting. I've never even heard of that.
Oh, yeah, it's like one of my like hard rules, consistency with that kind of things.
Oh, it's one of these games. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. You said it was inconsistent. I find a game that was really bad. I don't know if anybody else here played it. Was Kona. I absolutely love Kona. I highly recommend it. It's a first-person sort of mystery thriller kind of game. You kind of go into this snowy town and try and solve a murder mystery. But it had really bad UI. And it actually even had a pie chart, and it was really bad, and I'll talk about it.
Oh, sick! That's disgusting.
That's disgusting, I know. Pizza, did you say why, Pizza?
Oh, no, I was going to mention in terms of like bad UI, that's intentionally meant to be bad UI.
Right.
You should look up Cruelty Squad.
Oh, yeah.
Cruelty Squad.
Like, that is such a good example.
Right. Well, this had some really good UI and it had some really bad UI. So in terms of the immersion, I just want to talk about this for a second. In terms of the immersion, it did maps and diary entries and stuff really well. Whenever you found new clues or took pictures, you'd sort of flick through this handbook, and it felt really immersive and really good and added to the world. It did the same with the map. You pull out a map of the local area. It wasn't a very big open world, as you can see, but it allowed you to zoom in and look around where you were, and that was really good. But then for some reason, I don't know whether they ran out of time or like what, but then like you open up this inventory and it's hard to say. Hang on, I have to explain why this was bad. And this is less of a UI issue, maybe more of a UX issue.
Definitely UX issue.
There was like 3 or 4 different slots for the same thing, and there were like 2 slots, and one of them was like documents and another one was notes, and it wasn't clear which was which and why that was there, and and there was like a utilities folder, but then the stuff that was in there could be found in this folder. So it was just that's it sounded more like a UX problem the more I'm speaking, but make sure. I think it could have done with some trimming, right? We're gonna we're talking about that, right? Really go through the UI systems you have and really ask, okay, well, why is this here? What does this do? And why? Just why? Because often I think you'll find maybe you don't even need it if you cut it. But sorry, what was I looking up a second? Cruelty Squad?
Yeah. Oh, one more thing about that wheel, and then why I hate that wheel. That wheel in particular.
Well,
I hate
really,
that wheel
the Kona wheel.
Yeah, the Kona wheel.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
You see, some of them have like 7, some of them have 4, some of them, it's just inconsistent, and it breaks your muscle memory. So then you're like, yeah, and you try and like select something there, and then you're like, well, now I gotta reconfigure the way my thumb is thinking whenever I'm trying to do like a 5, because some are like right on the bottom. If you go down and you're like touching one of those on the bottom, and it's just like all over the place on all the numbers 7, 5, 4. I think I saw a 3. Is that a 3?
Yeah. There was even 1 a moment ago, but that was
items
you pick up. Yeah. but yeah, you're right. Consistency is building that muscle memory in menu systems, right? You want it to be very similar. Devious, is that what you're saying? So whether it's an inventory, whether it's a menu, right?
Well, another cool one is you're gonna do Cruelty Squad real quick.
Cruelty Squad, yeah. Let's just
if it doesn't come up, I've got it up on
okay, Peter. I'll change your screen.
What was I gonna say? Oh, a Fallout's wheel though is it's not really a wheel.
Oh man,
like
sorry, Devious. Yeah, I've seen this. This is intent. This is so bad, it's good.
You know what I mean? It's intentional, right?
It's intentional.
It's the style.
Yeah, man, that is. Whew.
It's probably the best example of being consistently inconsistent.
That is made by somebody who,
like, you know when you
hang on. I think I've just realized. Wait, I'm swapping the screens. I'm not swapping the screens on the Discord. I'm swapping the screens on.
I guess I'll do this.
The stream, but not the Discord. So the people in the Discord can't see Peter's screen. My bad, people. But okay, luckily, like most of it's been on mine. But we'll move off. So, what were you going to say, Devious? What was the other one you were going to bring up?
Oh yeah. So in art, there's the rule or the thing where you want to learn the rules so you know how to break the rules, and that's what that game was. They knew how to break the rules with that game.
So for those of you who weren't looking a second ago, this is Cruelty Squad. You've probably seen it before. This was, Devious was just talking about knowing the rules to break the rules. This was probably made by people who could make like the best UI in the world, and know exactly what not to do. But sorry, you were saying.
Oh no, that was it. Yeah, it's okay. one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and once you know the rules of the design, you can play with it. Unlike Persona 5, I feel like I have a chance of making Cruelty Squad. That's funny. Yeah. We should do a game jam theme or a monthly challenge about bad UI. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do that next. A game that is uniquely designed. The wheel ties in with the 2 analogs. Some people were talking about Anno 1800. I've actually never heard of this.
It's a civilization-like, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah.
And they were saying it has a nice UI, much of it condensed, using pictograms, symbols, and icons to show a lot of information in the least area, limiting the amount of writing on screen. I know games have good UI, says somebody else. Yeah, this looks good. This looks nice to look at. I mean, like, look at this. I think this is great. I think it's not too much, and it's actually keeping me interested. You know,
I'm just imagining it with the Persona style.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think the colours also really help with this as well.
The colours, yes.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Yeah,
contrast is a big thing with UI as well. You want things to stand out where they want to stand out. You know, like someone mentioned earlier, directing the eye.
Yeah. Move further along and you'll see the in-game HUD. My bad. Let's move further along. What are we looking at here? Here? Here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Still, this is really good.
This is what I mentioned before with like so much information, so your UI has to accommodate all that information. This is a good example.
Yep. This is I think one thing I want to just throw out there real quick, and we'll get to Swamp Gate to your point in a second. The older Nancy Drew games. But God, I've just forgotten my point. Oh yeah, just because, and I've certainly fallen for this trap as a sort of indie dev, amateur, whatever. And you guys, I'm sure, will not fall into this trap. But just because you like a certain UI style, or you think that a game does the UI well, unfortunately doesn't mean that UI or UX experience would work well in your game.
Yeah.
So make sure that while we take inspiration from others, and while we you may want to implement their way of doing things into your games, even if objectively the system that they have, the way it looks, whether it's diegetic or non-diegetic, is good, or you enjoyed it in that game, it just doesn't mean that if you transferred it over, it would go well in yours. So yeah, keep an eye on that and adapt as you go, because it can be easy to sort of copy what works and copy what you like, only to find that it doesn't work in your game. I remember the old UI for the old Nancy Drew point and click adventures. They're simply yet organized. Point and click games in my memory have often pretty good UI systems. It's not going to come up. Okay, maybe. Nancy Drew games. And as well, so another question I want to ask the chat is, what's your order of working on UI? Is it something you do? First of all, do you enjoy it? And second of all, do you do it at the beginning, or do you work on it as you go? Do you work on it at the end? How do you approach UI? Does it depend on what you've built in the game so far? Like Devious, walk me through your process on that.
Oh man, for me, I always make a mock-up. So I always want to see how. Okay, so a big thing with me is everything in a game influences everything else in the game. So like the design of the UI will be influenced by the way the game plays, the way the game looks, like obviously. But I typically do both at the same time. I jump back and forth.
Yep. My games haven't been dependent on UI, so it's made last. Yeah, the writer, I would agree with that. It's often the case that I'll come to the AI UI at the end, and the AI, I guess, but a little as I go. I agree with Devious. For me, I like diegetic UI, so my problem is I've fallen into a trap of a loop of the game will play one way, and I'll implement UI in a sort of diegetic-y kind of way, and then something, the game will change. I'll expand it. It'll, the scope will increase, and as the scope increases, the vibe changes slightly, and as the vibe changes, suddenly the piece of sort of diegetic mastery that I pulled off suddenly doesn't fit anymore, and so it needs changing. So that's my sort of trap that I often fall into. So I try and leave it as late as possible for me is what I try and do.
There's also your approach and how you design the game itself. Like if you are someone that makes like a GDD or a GDD, a game dev document, which outlines like what's going to happen in the game and all that stuff. If you go that route, then you'll probably not design the UI you'll design it in the GDD. But
yeah,
if you're like me, I have bullet points that I follow.
Right.
I don't have like an exact point. So I just like make the bullet points and I just start going, and then I just fill it out. How the game turns out is how the game turns out.
Yeah. What do you guys think about this kind of UI? So I don't know if any of you have played Alien Isolation. We talk about it a lot here at GameDev.tv, but is probably my favorite game of all time, arguably. But I hate its UI. I really hate this screen right here. This is a crafting menu where you have to. Basically, what you have to do is in fact, I don't even know if I want to tell you what you have to do. I have to, see if you can figure it out just based on what you're looking at. But I'm curious, what do you think? Any opinions on this?
It looks like you have to go up and down, and it does it one by one.
This is Alien Isolation, so yeah. Okay, so up and down one by one.
Yeah, because you have the little indicator on the left there, a little highlight, which shows which one you're selecting, and it obviously shows you how many you have of each one, and there's a max of each that you can hold. and you move up and down, and then as you select one, I guess it chooses one.
Okay.
Move cursor.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
and then when you select 3, then it puts it all together, and that's how you craft.
How does it make you feel?
It's okay. So this is one of the. So whenever I'm designing a crafting system, I found 2 main ways to do it. Either you select a recipe or you select the items, and that makes the recipe. This one is, and I've always found selecting the items to make the recipe to be more cumbersome than just selecting the recipe itself.
Yes,
and just having what you have.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, Devious. Yeah, and Darren not saying not intuitive. Completely agree. Yes, even though one of my favorite games of all time, I've always hated this UI, and that brings us on to intuition and Devious. That was a really good point you just brought up about how, so basically, sometimes granularity is not the way forward. Yeah. Right, especially even in situations where you think, well, maybe it is, like a crafting system. It's you want to select what you want to make. It kind of Minecraft does that a little bit, doesn't it? You kind of
I was gonna bring that up actually. I love the idea of Minecraft's crafting system, but I hate it like so much.
Wow, I love Minecraft actually
because it's so tedious. Watching people, I don't play Minecraft, and I've only played it like maybe twice. I don't hate it or anything. It's just not a game I really be fan of.
Sure, yeah.
But watching people just craft stuff is just like such a headache.
Yeah.
Or they're like putting stuff like it's cool. Like you can like make the shape and everything, and like you press the little button and it does the thing. But it's just so annoying.
It should speed up the process. Sure,
yeah. And that's why people started making the crafting book stuff where you just like press the button and it just does it.
It just does it. Oh, I thought of something. I want to make sure floors on maps are in different colors, so that people can tell the difference between first, second, and third floor on maps. We'll get to that. We'll round up in about 10 minutes. But once you get to that on our last, it's too blurry for you to read. Oh, yo, Bill Slayer. Sorry about that. What website is that? Yes, of course. So, of course, we linked this back at the beginning, but this is Game UI Database. So it's a really good website to go to for those of you who joined later on in the stream or on Discord. It's a free resource, of course, not sponsored, but it's a great place to go to look at how other games do UI systems. And there's a lot of filters and thousands of games, thousands of filters, in-game screenshots, menu screenshots. It's a great place to get examples of what works and then more importantly, maybe what doesn't work. Maps should be more topographical, or confusion will abound when players trying to navigate terrain. Yeah, maps are a really interesting one actually. Maps are, I don't know, maps, especially in 2D games, I find that really difficult. But
there's a bad map that I really didn't like was Jedi Fallen Order, the first one. I don't know if you've ever played it, but it's like a 3D type map, and just navigating where you're meant to go in that map is just like I'm playing it and I'm like, I think they improved it in the second one. I can't remember because I never really paid attention enough in the second one. So I just decided to try and figure it out myself. But yeah,
is that the map?
This one?
No, it'll be the map that I don't know whether it'll come up. Possibly.
We can probably filter for it. This.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that doesn't.
You have to rotate it, and things overlap, and I'm just like, just tell me where I'm meant to go.
Yeah.
At this point, just tell me where I'm.
So
yeah, that was definitely one.
This is a UX thing. When you start going, so this is like this is one of those things where you just cannot have a solution to the problem that you're talking about, because if you want to have the map, if they want to have the map, I mean, it looks great, but when you start going,
visually, it looks quite cool. Yeah.
When you start using like floors and stuff, maps become more complicated.
Yeah.
I think maps what doesn't help that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Peter. Finish your point. That's fine.
I was just going to say what doesn't help is, like, for instance, some of those pathways are so small that they're so easily missable, right? Whereas, like, you look at like a map in, say, like any Metroidvania game, like even like you think of like Hollow Knight and the way they do the maps.
Yeah.
It is kind of Metroidvania type game where you have to go backtrack now and then and stuff to get stuff. Okay. Yeah. And I think with like the way like Hollow Knight does it, or like any Metroidvania game or Metroid game in general, whether it's like a 2D, they just do it just 10 times better, you know, like when they bring up the map and you can like see where to go. Like the location. It's very simple, straight to the point. Whereas in like Jedi Fallen Order, like you have to like tilt it in a way just to see. That is a path, and it's not just like invisible. Because the thing as well, because it's 3D, if you angle it on a certain way, sometimes the path will just disappear.
Sure.
Because it's like so thin. Because it's 3D, it'll disappear. Whereas like with this, it doesn't matter about the rotation
where
at that
you are,
point,
what you're doing.
Well, this works better because it's only 2-dimensional movement. You're going up and down, up, left, and right, but you're not having a Z. That's what makes the Fallen Order map more of a difficult thing because you have floors.
Honestly, maps are Hollow Knight, I would argue, probably has probably one of the best maps I've ever seen in a game, to be honest. If I'm honest, I don't know what it is. It's just maps I find. I don't know whether they're just hard to make. I don't know if it's just because you're basically having to sort of track where the player is, and and then represent that in a sort of more digestible way, which is difficult to do. But for some reason, I just don't really use maps in games, even the ones that have them. I find it really, really difficult to use them. Maybe the Jedi Fallen Order is just one example of many that's bad, but I'm just trying to think of other examples.
I can mention one more, which is I hope they improve it. So in the Yakuza games, they'll have a map similar to in GTA, right, where it's in the bottom corner and stuff. But the map doesn't rotate with where you're like facing, so you kind of have to. I'm turning left, so you have to focus more on like the cursor rather than it rotating like it does in like a GTA game and stuff like that, which can get a little bit annoying, especially when you go in like towards the bottom side of the camera, because then it inverts sometimes. It can be a bit annoying. But
can anyone think in a the sort of we'll wrap up in about 7 or 8 minutes, but can anyone think of examples of, well, first of all, what do we guys think? Do we need maps? Do we need maps in games? Are they useful?
Definitely.
And then if so, what are some good examples of maps? Can we really think, when have you really used a map in a video game? And what are one way that I was thinking about mapping was to sort of, I played this game, I can't remember what it's called, but it was a 2D platformer, and you could turn these off and on, but every room you went into had a title or a name, right? You're in corridor this, or room, the meeting room, or this or that, and then the map sort of, it told you sort of where those places were, not even necessarily where you were, but you knew where you were based on the title of the room you're in, and then you could look. It's just really, really. I don't know. The map I've used the most is just in Skyrim, and that's just for fast traveling. I've never even used it for location purposes. But Animal Wells map is really good. Void Souls. That's interesting. Can we think of any examples? Pizza and Davis, when was the last time you actually used a map in a video game for like a sort of locating purposes? You needed to look at it. You needed to know where to go. Can you even remember?
Survival games definitely need that kind of thing, because you need well, this also goes in the UX as well, when you have to have map markers, landmarks.
Oh wow, is this
also
Animal
goes
Wells
into
map?
the UX. Yeah.
Wow, this is very pixelated Hollow Knight. But this looks just like so much effort. You know what I mean? This is like, oh man, you're basically making a whole other game in building a map like this, rather, because you're having to figure out how to minimize the levels you've already built into a way that's readable and recognizable, but also includes it's a skill.
Well, your approach would be to you basically graph it, because I've made maps like this before.
Right.
You basically convert tiles. Just go with tiles. So you select the size and you say, okay, this one tile that's like I don't know, 64 by 64. This represents like 1 pixel on the map or something. It wouldn't be that big, but as an example, that'd be like that little section, and then you basically build off of that. And it actually becomes really easy as long as your map doesn't start doing some kind of weird overlapping. That's when you run into troubles.
Colonel Panic.
I was going to say, it depends on if you're thinking of a mini map or a map that you have to pull up, right? So, for instance, like the times that I use in terms of like a big map would be like if like Spider-Man, for instance, like the Spider-Man games, because I'm trying to like trying to get like 100% it right. I'm trying to get all these, so I'm basically trying to like find out where the next like activity is, set it so then it can like tell me in game where it is or how far away it is. That's usually the only time I ever use like a big map. To be honest, I tend to rely on the mini maps if I can. Ghost of Tsushima is a good map as well.
Yeah, maybe I just don't play enough games with maps. Actually, maybe that's my own bias there. The Final Fantasy 14 maps all the time. I love the game, but sometimes the map needs darker shading. Yeah. I play a lot of games where the map is the game. Well, you know what? If you're going to spend your entire time making a map for your game, you might as well do that and combine the map into the game. But okay, we've got about 4 minutes or so left. We'll sort of wrap up here. But thank you, first of all, everybody, for joining and engaging. And I hope you all found that useful and found something, took something away from this. UI is very important, and it's something that we could talk about this. We could look at so many examples. We could spend another 2 hours talking about this. UX is something obviously we kind of catered around to. Let us know, either in lounge or wherever, if there are other specific areas of deep dive that you'd find useful, whether it's a course you're taking or whether it's just hobby area, right? Something you're doing as a hobby that you'd like more in-depth analysis on. And we can certainly do that. Right, we can do coding deep dives. We can do UX deep dives, sound design deep dives. That might be a fun one. All right, so let us know what you think, and we'll be happy to do that. We're going to do more events and go from there. So that's really cool. This has been a lot of fun. Really like talking about UI. Obviously, there's so much and so many different elements, right? That we could go around and around in circles.
Cover like just the design, like blocking, iconography, alignment, contrast. What's on contrast? And you have like empty space.
There's loads. Yeah. If we can
that's no problem.
Right, we can revisit UI as well, right? Because there's so much stuff we can be more specific. Where do you put stuff? Where do you do this? What's the best programming language? That is our next event. Yes, we're going to go live and argue for an hour and a half about what the best programming language is, and anyone who disagrees gets banned from the server. So that's yeah. But yeah, appreciate you guys coming. Appreciate you all hanging out. This is a lot of fun. We enjoy these. And of course, we've got the monthly challenge still going. We're going to put our own submissions in there real soon. And we're also going to announce the events for next month real soon. So today or tomorrow. So hopefully see you guys there. Next week, we do have one event left, I think. Yes, Community Showcase, which is sort of an adapted version of the feedback event that we ran last year. End of last year, where we sort of take a look at the posts made in Get Game Feedback, which is the forum post. Dragon Spirit, no, you're too late. Yes, just as we're wrapping up. Sorry about that.
Good thing it's recorded.
But good thing it's recorded. Exactly.
I'll read the comments of these, by the way. So like,
yeah. Same.
What'd you say? Sorry, please say that again. Sorry.
Oh, I read the comments of the recordings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on YouTube. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to go back through this at any point, if there are any points that you want to listen to again for some reason, because we have amazing voices, they are stored live on YouTube, recorded on YouTube. Sorry, so you can just go back there whenever. We've got that community showcase event next week. We'll be going through some stuff and giving feedback to posts in Get Game Feedback. And if you can attend that, please do, even if you've made a post, because we're going to prioritize giving feedback to people who are live there with us. It's just better that way, I find. But yeah, cool. Appreciate that. I'm just gonna stop the.
Wait, I want to say, make sure when you have your post in the feedback that it has a video that we can watch.
For sure.
Because we can't play the games right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're still working on that. Appreciate that. Some of you may feel gameplay tests are the best sort of feedback. We're still figuring out a good way to do that, because there are various reasons why we're not doing that.
Yeah, we're still working on it. But I will watch the videos if y'all post them, even if they're like an hour long. I'll probably like. I will. I don't know if I can.
Devious will.
I will, because like I love looking at newer.
That's nice.
Because you never know what you can find. Yeah,
it's true. Never know what you can steal.
I'll probably watch it at like 1.5 speed though, but if it's that long.
Yeah, make a post, leave some videos and some screenshots, etc., and hopefully see you next week. But all right, thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Now I have to end the event. There we go. And done.
Woo.
We're still live.
Are we?
Oh,